Lakeisha's Sustainable Resources Project. What is living sustainably? To live sustainably involves branching the guilt that exists between current lifestyle choices and more idealized sustainability practices. To do this, we can recycle, take shorter showers, and have less carbon in our diet. BC farming practices. Sustainable agriculture has three parts that are difficult to balance. There's the social, which includes the employment and the relationship between the producers and the consumers. The environmental, which deals with the quality of life and the resources. And the economic, which is making a living at the same time as maintaining a decent price for society. We can balance two of these fairly well, but in trying to balance all three of them, it's really difficult to do that. For example, we can balance the social and the economic aspect of farming, but in doing that, we kill the environment. Like, we end up with more pesticides in the air or in the food, and it kills a lot of things. Factory farming versus sustainable farming. Monsanto is a company that focuses on factory farming. They create their own gene that they put in their seeds that's immune to their pesticides and herbicides so that they can make more money out of that. And this feeds more people and saves time, but it also creates more reliable crops. But it can also kill their crop at all, because if there's poor weather, their crop won't grow. And the farmers lose communications with their neighbors. The farmers are not allowed to save seeds because the Monsanto controls everything. And if the farmers try to save their seeds, they feel that the farmers are trying to scam them. Factory farming versus sustainable farming. Sustainable farming is what the human race has relied on for many, many years, and this allows a variety in crops. So if there's a drought or a disease that spreads, the crop may actually survive, and we actually still may have some food. How this affects our health is it's not solely killing us, because it's a natural way of growing things. It's not full of chemicals that will either kill us or cause mutations. And an example of how we farm sustainably is with potatoes. How we grow potatoes is we bury the potato and allow it to grow. We have to make sure that the potato has eyes when we bury it so that the shoots can grow. And when there's this green shoot that comes up above the soil, we bury it all the way up to the top, except for the top leaves, so that it can continue to grow. And when it is eventually done growing, we have all of these potatoes all around the stem that we feast on. The history of potatoes. They are actually originally from Peru, even though we more know them coming from Ireland. The potatoes were poisonous until the Peruvians domesticated them about 8,000 years ago. And how they did this is they adapted nature. They did not change it. They didn't fill it up with all these chemicals to make them edible. They tried many different types of potatoes and many different ways on how to grow them. And they figured out that there's this green part on the tomato, which we now know is Psilocysa. And it still does appear on the potatoes when we grow them in light, which is why we have to bury them. And in Ireland, the potato famine started when a fungus killed all of the potatoes. And now we have genetically modified the potatoes with a bacterium that dwells in the soil and works as a pesticide, so that way we won't end up dying due to lack of potatoes. Where does our food come from? Food comes from nature, meat from the animals, and fruits and vegetables from the seeds. And once the seeds grow, they actually begin to flower. And after they flower, they produce fruit. They produce fruit after they've been pollinated. And the bees are the main pollinator that the world has. And if we stopped killing all the bees, we'd actually be able to increase our crop production by up to 300%. And some plants, like tomatoes, can only be pollinated through the vibration of bees. So even though we have all these different birds and other kinds of bugs that can pollinate, it wouldn't be as effective because, well, we kind of lose our tomatoes, and tomatoes, we need those for pizza and spaghetti and stuff. Bees. More on bees. Bees, they don't actually live in hives like we see on like Winnie the Pooh and other TV productions like that. They live more in swarms. Like they'll either swarm around a tree branch, or they'll live in the hollow part on trees. Wherever the queen bee is, they all kind of stick around there, and while they're trying to protect their swarm, they end up forming this superorganism So to other animals, they all seem like one big animal, but it's actually made of many, many, many billions, actually, of individuals. And there are over 20,000 different species of bees. And a lot of them, they take rhizin, which is the sticky substance that we find on plants, whether it be on the leaves or the stem, and turn it into propolis, which is a natural antibiotic. We can still buy it today, but it's like really, really expensive because it takes a lot of bees to actually be able to produce that. And while they're carrying the nectar to the hive, they separate it into glucose and fructose. And how they do that is they spit out the nectar, they let all the water in that part of the nectar evaporate, and they suck it back in. And they do this constantly until they get back to the hive and they have it separated. And then they put it into their swarm, and it turns into honey. More on bees. Bees have their own system. It's almost like a political system that everyone has their own job. The drones are the male bees, and they can actually live up to 90 days unless they mate with the queen bee. As soon as they mate, they die. The worker bees are the female bees, and they do everything from maintaining the hive to collecting the honey. As soon as they're born, they'll just stick around the nursery and they kind of tidy it up a little bit. Then they eventually get to work with the queen and they help her with all of her babies. And then they go out and they start collecting honey. And the queen bee gives birth to all the bees. And she lives up to 4 years because she's like pampered and spoiled because she's a queen. And when the queen bee is starting to die, they choose a new queen bee by a new larva from her, and they feed it royal jelly, which eventually makes her fertile. Why are plants important? Without plants, we have no food. We can eat plants both directly or indirectly, whether it be in a salad or a steak. And why do we classify plants? We classify them so we know whether or not they are usable, whether we can eat them or use them for medicine or any other helpful thing like a pillow or a blanket when we're camping. Identifying plants. Some of the plants that we've identified are the English ivy. And how we can tell what an English ivy is we usually see it all over the place, whether it be on the ground, climbing up a tree, or on a fence line. And ivy has short, thin stems that allow it to grow everywhere. And the leaves are kind of lobed, and there's 3 main lobes. There's also licorice fern. How we can tell the difference between licorice fern and sword fern is the licorice fern, the leaves are kind of fused to the stem, where the sword fern, you can actually see that the leaves are like not completely attached to the stem. And there's also the spotted dead nettle. This one, it has different shades of green on the leaf, so it gives it a little bit more color, which kind of attracts our attention, which makes us kind of touch it, and then it kind of hurts. And this is the Sustainable Resources final project. So thank you.